Real-time Sovryn is go.
Woo, the man of tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, here with you from a remote location. If you can kind of see out there, you might notice a certain lack of mountains, but boy, it still somehow, looks northerly. That's because I am actually in Michigan right now for varying reasons. Not just me, but also the Empress of Space, Time, and Beauty, who's hanging out in the background there. But I want to get in a real-time Sovryn here for you because Michigan's a weird place. So I actually have family here. You wouldn't think that there'd be, a bunch of Jews here, but actually there are, including some of my favorite people, like Dr. Justin Sledge from Esoterica. Anyway, so obviously not in the studio for this one. But yeah, I have a lot of family up here. I've actually come here quite a few times when I was much younger. But we're here, and we're actually having a conversation with someone that a thought really crossed my mind. And I don't know if you can see this, but I'm also not wearing pants. Woo! Oh, let's be careful. It's just YouTube. But we were having a conversation with someone, and like something that always blows my mind. So you would think, and actually it's kind of fitting. I'm wearing a KISS shirt right now, Detroit Rock City, right? Okay. I'm not in Detroit though, by the way. You would think that like rock and roll is the big deal here. You know what I mean? Come on, it's fucking Michigan, right? Alice Cooper, think of the whole thing, the whole Detroit scene, Ted Nugent, go down the list, right? But what's a huge deal here? Country music. In my opinion, I always find that when that's a thing that's up north, that's a really strange thing. But it's a big deal here. And actually, when I moved from, originally, I grew up in New York City, and the promised land. And when I moved upstate, it was a big deal in upstate New York. Country, huge. Absolutely huge at the time. People listening to Tracy Bird, whatever, Garth Brooks, and hey, even I got into Garth Brooks. That guy was a phenomenon, like Michael Jackson or take your pick. And, but we were having this conversation with this person who, I know the type of music that she had been into previously, but she had stated, into country now. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, how, when I was a kid, when I was a teenager, and even a little older than that, the idea, the music you were into was such a part of your identity. You know what I mean? Like, if you're into metal, you didn't listen to disco. Now, disco was already kind of dead, by the time I was even born. But, you didn't listen to rap, or you didn't do that. Now, certainly in the aughts, and even into today, a lot of those musical styles are like mixing, and in great ways too. For example, think of Beast in Black, one of the greatest bands ever, and certainly one of the hottest acts going right now. They mixed disco with metal, which, granted, and ironic that I'm wearing a KISS shirt again, certainly KISS did that very successfully with, honestly, their biggest song ever, that being I Was Made for Loving You off of Dynasty, which had a disco beat to it. So it's nothing new. And that was a controversy, boy, at the time, back in 78, 79. That was not good for a lot of KISS fans, because they're like, what the fuck, KISS and disco? This is impossible. Anyway, it's amazing to me, that people, and because I hear this actually a lot, and it never really clicked for me, and I'm going to explain what clicked for me. It's amazing to me that people can just suddenly on a dime today, shift their, entire musical identity in a very real way. Doesn't mean they don't still listen to the stuff they used to listen to, but they can shift their musical identity on a dime. And you know what I think it is? I think part of it was that, when I was younger, you bought music. You had to buy music. You bought CDs, tapes, whatever you bought, whatever format, you rocked. And so the idea, and say you bought, an ass ton of metal albums, or in this case, a ton of country albums or whatever. I mean, remember, we used to have CD towers, that were like, I'm 6'1", they're as tall as me, some of these CD towers, right? So you're buying a lot, and that's hundreds, if not thousands of dollars that you're spending on music. And I think that there was like almost a sunk cost fallacy, or maybe not a fallacy, but anyway, there was just the feeling of a sunk cost. There was a feeling that, okay, no, this is part of my identity because I put thousands of dollars into this fucker, right? I spent thousands of dollars on metal music. And that's not even counting the t-shirts or whatever. You know what I mean? But today, people don't buy music. They just don't buy music. And so the idea that you could just on a dime instantly switch to any genre, and make that like such a core part of your listening experience in life throughout your day, is so easy to do. Like it doesn't even have to be like a part of your identity. Even though I think, there's still like strong communities within these things, like the metal community, and I'm sure within country and everything, even though I don't even know where that makes sense, right? Because, for example, what do you think of, as being the country capital of the world, right? You think like Memphis or Nashville? Well, like, newsflash, those, especially like Nashville, that's where all the metal people live now. That's where all the metal gets made now, and all the hard rock and everything. It's not even so much about country, but they basically work together. It seems anyway. So it was just very shocking to me, the idea, like, it's still, I lived in a world for so long where, again, like the genre of music you were into, like your identity was just wrapped up in that. Now, I mean, I think that's still a thing. You think like the EDM scene, right? Like there's a lot of festivals you go to and whatever, and there's like, again, clothing and all that stuff. Like that's still a thing. That still can become a major part of your identity. It can become the primary part of your identity for some, right? But you really can change that just in an instant. Like you can change your entire musical milieu, just by saying, okay, nope, Spotify, I want you to, play this and make me a playlist with this stuff and whatever. And I suppose ultimately it's a very good thing. I think broadening your horizons is a good thing. That doesn't mean I'm just going to suddenly, like, I've said this a million times on Sovryn Tech. I'm down for listening to just about anything, but don't put country on, So I can't do it. I mean, there's some that's fun, that has like that kind of, honestly, some of it, and I mean this, like it'll have like a very like tongue-in-cheek erotic energy, and that's something I like in a lot of my music, and it can have that, but it's not that common. It feels like most of it is like very sad stuff, and who knows what the hell else kind of attitudes and platitudes get wrapped up in it. But it's just, it's such a, again, it still strikes me when it happens, when somebody says, oh yeah, no, I listen to this, now, and it could just be like a year later, and there's this dramatic shift. But it makes all the sense in the world that you can do that. Why? Because, again, there's no sunk cost. There's no, there's no money on the line in you doing so, other than what, $12, $15 a month that you spend on a streaming service, which gives you access to everything. The only thing I guess partly that I wonder about it, now passion doesn't have to be a zero-sum game, but your time is. And, I have I just wonder, like, can you really, can you really jump in the passion when you're jumping from genre to genre all the time? It's different when you've gotten older, and you're like 40 and like, okay, you've lived 3-4 lifetimes or 50 or 60, and sure, you've had 10 years where you're into this and 10 years where you're into that. So then, again, with that time spent, I think you can, really get the passion for it. But I guess it does also, it points at, what I'm saying is like not getting passionate about it. It points at a certain passivity with the music. And I think part of the strength of some of these genres, including country, and I'm saying this positively, part of the strength, it is actually the community that builds around it, the culture that builds around it. In the metal sense, like I think of the song Die for Metal, I think it is, by Manowar, It was like a bonus track. And, in that, it's like talking about, it's like, oh yeah, here's where I found my brotherhood, here's where I found this and all that. And it's all kind of cheesy, and I get that. But at the same time, it's also kind of very real. I can remember, like, Jeff, by the way, that's off of Warriors of the World, Warriors of the World United, that album from Manowar, killer track. But I can remember, like, Jeff Tate, who, was a long-time frontman for Queensryche. He talked about, like, kind of the posers at metal shows where, like, you could go to, there was near some of these, like, legendary metal venues. You could go to, like, a clothing shop nearby, and you could literally ask them, like, all right, give me the metal special, and they'll dress you up like you're some kind of rock star in no time, even though outside of it you're, like, wearing cottagecore shit and whatever else. And they get you in there, and you come out, and you look like you're the biggest metal fan in the world, but you probably couldn't name half the band. So, like, I get that, and that's where part of it feels like a loss. In one sense, I love the fact that you can have such a broad scope of what you listen to. In the other, and this goes to other, like, forms of entertainment, and I guess you could say culture overall. You sort of lose that ability to connect with someone in a deep way over their passion for something. Because, they may not be so knowledgeable, or they may not have spent so much time with it, and so on. But maybe it also gives you the chance to, when you know it and they're new to it, to, tell them, oh, you should check this out, you should check this out, you should check this out. And that's something where actually, with the streaming services, I really like the social aspects that have been starting to get baked in to Spotify and Apple Music and things like this, where you can share songs and you can do, all kinds of these wacky things, where you can connect with people over it. So I guess ultimately it's kind of a two-edged sword. It's kind of a new world. As I've always said, the big problem today as well is the big win today is that anybody can make music today. The big loss is anybody can make music today. And so the quality's not there. And, and there's so many other shifts happening in the music industry. But at the same time, again, just like what we're talking about here, where you can, like, shift the genre that you identify with or that you listen to the most on a dime, you can really, at the same time, you have access to, like, all music of almost all time, it feels like. And so, as much as genres don't matter, I feel like the age of music doesn't matter, because that used to be a huge deal when I was a kid too. It's like, people would say, if you're listening to something, say we're in high school in the 90s, and you're listening to something from, like, 1981 or 1975 or something like that, and they're like, ooh, that's old, and that's not a problem anymore. Even you listen to top 40 radio, nobody does, like, a specific time frame, it seems. Every top 40 radio is, like, the best of the 70s, 80s, 90s, and today, right? And that ultimately, I think, is a good thing. If you can get rid of, like, the barriers to what can be considered, what's listenable, that's ultimately a good thing. And that's, I think, ultimately where we're at. And so ultimately, if we're doing it in threes, ultimately, it's all kind of a good thing. There's some negatives for sure, but ultimately, it's a good thing. So I'm going to leave it at that. And so don't be surprised when you come up north and there are so many people listening to country music. Just don't be shocked. All right. That's it for this little real-time Sovryn. And I'll see all of you on the other side. Woo!